Alrighty. Well, we're going to go ahead and get going because it is a big day for another week in review. And I'm again your host, Dan Cosgrove of Anthem Capital. Lighting could be a bit better today, but hey, it's a rainy day in Boston, Massachusetts, so it's not like we have much to do with natural lighting. But as our prior posts have been, we're going to cover our top 5 news stories in real estate. Then we're going to get into the top 3 LinkedIn posts that we have found most engaging across the platform and finish it up with our weekly blog kind of opinion analysis of things that we can take out of it in our life. And so as we get started, the rundown on the top 5 real estate stories, as the headline said, there's a battle going on in New York that could greatly impact the real estate industry. And that is Airbnb versus New York. So we're going to hop into that story in just a second. But I also want to tell you about U.S. home sales hitting their lowest level since 2008. And I think all of us know what happened in 2008. Then if you're involved in real estate and you're a real estate agent, there's a warning sign coming out for you. And I want you to be aware of that. Followed by the big news of it's cheaper to rent than to buy. What does that mean? I'll give you a full breakdown as to what that means. And then affordable housing. We've all been screaming for it, but unfortunately, there's going to be some cost increases coming to affordable housing, and I'll explain to you why. So with that, I'm going to get into Airbnb versus New York. It's a nice little boxing match here. You don't know who's actually going to win it. But to give you guys, to catch you up on what's been occurring is in September, New York City enacted a law that required hosts to register with the city, verify registration, before taking any payment, and establish a list of buildings that were on a prohibited list for short-term rental. Well, that's a big change because you had a lot of investors in there. Now, why did this occur? Well, the average one-bedroom shoebox or apartment, as they call it in New York City, rents for about $4,000 plus. And officials say the short-term rental space is what has driven up. So like Airbnb and VRBO, they're the ones to blame for the higher rental prices in this housing market, and because they've taken units off the market. Now, the results are way too early to tell, but just as a baseline, since this law was enacted in September, there was 22,000 plus units on the market in New York City in August. And now, as of the time of posting, there's only 3,200 units on the market in New York City, and only 450 of them have actually registered. So that's a vastly big drop. They still say there's plenty of hotels to support tourism in New York, but if this is in fact successful and NYC succeeds, you could see something like this spread across the country into other cities where tourism is a major attractive. Now, we're going to shift over to U.S. home sales because U.S. home sales is a big deal. A lot of people like the idea of actually buying versus renting. And it's not really good news, depending upon, of course, how you look at it. But U.S. home sales have hit their lowest level since 2008. And 2008 was the big recession. Now, home prices are still at record highs because it's all about supply and demand. And there's so much reduced supply that the demand is still up there, so that instead of maybe 20 people bidding on a house right now it's only 10, but still those 10 are still driving each other up until they all give up and say, okay, that person wins. So the prices haven't dropped. It's the actual amount of transactions have nearly halved. And that's all due, in fact, to the 7.5% interest rates that people are paying on a 30-year mortgage. What does that look like for us in the future? Well, 2024, we don't expect that getting any better. Maybe interest rates will flatten. Hopefully there's only another quarter point increase at the end of this year. And then 2025, we might see things starting to come back down, which could really warm up the market and more people buying. But the fact of the matter is almost 40% of recent home buyers since the first time home buyers are around 35, they actually had to borrow money from a family to help with the down payments. So that's kind of like a shocking truth going on here in the real estate market, but something to be wary of when it comes to buying your home. Now, the third story I wanted to share, and of course this is going to be a biased one because I'm a real estate person, but it's a warning sign for real estate agents. Our dear friends at the Justice Department are reportedly considering legal intervention against real estate commissions. And if anybody's watched Selling Sunset, my wife loves that, so I've started watching it. Those agents could, like myself, could also be in trouble. And just so background for people that haven't gotten to that experience of buying or selling a house, since a lot of people, you don't first do that transaction until you're at least 35. Historically speaking, you spend about 9 to 10% if you're the seller of a house on fees. So if you're selling it for $1 million, expect about $100,000 to be lost in your transaction. And some of those fees are like origination fees, lending fees, closing fees, escrow fees, inspection, like appraisal, like all that stuff. Sometimes that gets pushed onto you as the seller. But the biggest one by far is the agent fees or the broker fee. And that's historically speaking 5 to 6%. Now that 5 to 6% doesn't just go to one person. Half of that goes to the selling agent, half of that goes to the buying agent. So they are rendering a service, and thus, of course, I think they should be paid because people don't work for free. I can also cite other data, like people that love to list their home for sale by owner. Please keep doing that. Data has shown that for sale by owners actually sell their property for about 15% less than what they could do with an agent. So please, please, please do that, because me as a buyer, I would love nothing more than to get a more affordable price. You can save your money on those fees, but you're also not going to get as much profit as you were originally going to get. And kind of like take that into perspective. The CEO of Redfin, that really big company, he was cited as saying if the DOJ does actually dismantle this current commission structure, then half of real estate agents in the country would be unemployed. And the government doesn't want high unemployment rate, especially if people are actually working. So here's to hoping that agents actually get paid the services that they are rendering. Now, another thing that I want to shift over to after we finish that story is it's cheaper to rent versus buy. So what does that mean? If you are a real estate investor, then that title is actually a good thing because, again, it's all about that supply and demand. Now, according to Zillow Group, in major cities, think in California, New York, Boston, the rent-to-own gap has only grown. And what I mean by that is, say a home price, which is the average in the area, is $1.4 million. A buyer who puts down just 10% has to pay a monthly mortgage at the current interest rates of nearly $9,000. That's roughly $5,000 higher compared to monthly rent prices. Thus, you in theory are saving $5,000 a month by renting. So what does that mean then? There's going to be increased rental demand. Thus, if you're a real estate owner, you don't actually have to offer discounts to have people stay in your units because it is drastically more affordable for them to rent versus own in the current market environment. So if you want to make money in real estate as an investor, look for the markets where you have the biggest rent to own gap and continue to invest there versus in other markets where it might be a more one-to-one type ratio. So the last story that we shared again in our email newsletter, which you can always access whenever you want, is the fact of affordable housing is going to see an increase. And we know, our group is also working on affordable housing. We believe everybody should have a right to live in a home or a place that they call home. But the sad fact of the matter is there's only so many things you can actually do as a real estate owner. And a survey of affordable housing owners of over 2.7 million units in the United States have shown that there's going to be cost increases coming in America. And nearly all of it is for things that I've already cited, like property tax increases and all that stuff. But I want to focus on insurance premiums, because insurance premiums in this past year have been 29%. Now that's huge. That's up from 17% in the prior year. And there's some reasons like natural disasters and insurance groups have to make back their money and all that stuff. But if your expenses are just going up that way, there's only so many things you can do as an owner. You can try and take up your deductible and hope that helps. You can, of course, always bid it out to other insurance groups, but still, those are increased costs. Believe me, real estate owners like ourselves are looking for ways to decrease our operating expenses, and we're going to do our best for it because ultimately we want people to be able to affordably live at our places. But if we can't cut all those costs, then the last thing that you have to do is increase rent just so you can make ends meet as an owner, because the last thing you want is not to be able to cover your debt service coverage ratio, thus the property defaults, and it gets taken over by the bank or just turns into kind of a slum. And you never want that, because now you're no longer a landlord, you're a slumlord, and it doesn't create the quality of life for anybody. So there's going to be some challenges in the affordable housing market, but that's challenges that every real estate owner is seeing right now, just due to the current costs. So that's our top 5. We hit the Airbnb versus New York. That's a big one. The U.S. home sales hitting their lowest level since 2008. The Department of Justice trying to cut commissions for real estate owners. The fact that it's cheaper to rent versus buy, and how that could be really beneficial as an owner, and the unfortunate cost increases that are becoming more prevalent in affordable housing until we get to an environment that is more sustainable for everybody involved. So I want to now move into my top 3 LinkedIn posts that I found really impactful and something I figure I should share with the audience. First one's coming from Jenna Kutcher, and she's an online marketing expert. If you don't follow her, I suggest you do. She's really good. And I'm just going to kind of read her post because it's short and simple, and then I'll provide my thoughts and commentary on it. And so what she says is, you do not need a fancy degree to make an impact. The truth, life can be our teacher, and there's a good chance it's teaching you some worthy lessons right now. Some of the most life-changing lessons I've learned didn't come from folks with multiple degrees. They came from those who went before me and who decided to share their stories and experiences. So here's a little tough love. If you don't share your story, you could be depriving someone of a story that could drastically improve or even save their life. Life is unpredictable, but we have the pen in our hands. So why not write a good story? Your story matters. Don't keep it to yourself. Here's my thoughts. If you open yourself up and are vulnerable, then you're showing your true authentic self, which can help others overcome their own self-limiting beliefs. I know I have a story to tell. I've kind of told it, but I haven't told the full story, and I'm just not ready to tell it yet. But each time I get on these things, it helps me open myself a little bit more. And some people will say, hey, I'm already talking way too much. Sure. But I haven't even told my full story yet, and someday it will come out. But if you have a story out there, get out there and tell it. It could actually make a change, and there's a lot of people I wish would have told their story that I would have learned from before I got into some situations that I've now had to work my way out of. So please tell your story. You're actually going to help people. Now, another person that I liked, and you probably don't know him as well, his name's Kevin Bubb. And yeah, he's a real estate guy, has his own podcast. He's been in the business for about 20 plus years. And it's not a real estate type post, but it's the reason why I like real estate. And it's just a picture of him with his family and a quote from Barbara Bush that many of you might know. And it says, at the end of your life, you'll never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with your wife, a husband, a friend, a child, or a parent. And that serves as a great reminder on why we wake up in the morning. I grind so that I can spend more time with my family. That comes first to me. And so never forget that. Like, yes, we work, but we shouldn't work to work. We should work to live. And if you can remember that, then that will help you prioritize what's really most important, which should be yourself and your family. And then my final post, I will probably cite this guy every damn week if I'm being real. Grant Cardone, biggest name in the real estate business. Kind of just love his mentality. He's polarizing. You either love him or you hate him, but I like what he does. And it's all about failure. He's just basically saying, quit making sense of failure. You need to recover from your failure. You have to act now and learn from it. But the quote that he really said, which sparked me thinking about then another person, is, I have failed 1,000 times and no one knows it because I refuse to quit. Really impactful quote. Here's a better quote that I really love. And for those that know me, I was a huge sports fan growing up, played basketball and soccer throughout my life. And this guy named Michael Jordan was my idol. And the line he has is, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost more than 300 games. 26 times I have been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. So if you are experiencing failure right now, I think we all have experienced failure. I've definitely experienced failure myself. You have to find that drive from within to keep on going, because believe me, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We just need to stay motivated and persevere. So that was our 3 LinkedIn posts from Kevin, Jenna, and Grant. I want to shift us now over into our weekly blog, which again is posted every Sunday on this page, and can also be found via Medium. So this week's blog is a bit shorter, but it ties directly to The Office. And for anybody that likes TV, I think you could argue that Seinfeld, The Office, and Friends are the most multi-generational classics. And the first 7 seasons of The Office, when Michael Scott, aka Steve Carell, was playing the lead role, will go down as some of the best in history. But interestingly enough, I'm actually not going to talk about those first 7 seasons. I'm in fact going to talk about the very last show in season 9, where Ed Helms, aka Andy Bernard, says the following is, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." So I'll say that again. I wish there was a way to know that you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. That line gave me a full serving of reality, because we grind constantly, and we don't look up to take a breath. And in this journey of we call life, we seem to always be in a mad rush for the next milestone. I'm 100% guilty of this. Hell, I'm even on here right now when I should be cooking breakfast for my kid. And I have the tendency to always need to be doing something and planning for the future. You can ask my wife on this one. So there are certainly plenty of positives approaching your life as a chessboard, which is in last week's blog, so you can always check that one out. And planning not just for the next move, but the next 5 moves. But there's also a risk of being so focused on the future that you forget to enjoy the present. You can cherish your past, but you can't change it. You can plan for a better future, but you can't fast forward to it. You can, however, be present. Now you might be asking, what does this have to do with real estate and money? And the short answer is, it doesn't. I do real estate so I can create indestructible wealth to support my family and my community. But if I'm only focused on money and have my blinders on to all the other joys in life, then before I know it, I'll be in a nursing home wondering where the hell my life has gone. In closing, my lone real warning in this week is, wake up. You are in the good old days. So it's time to enjoy them. So thanks for taking the time to join me this week. We'll be back every single week around this time, somewhere between Friday and Saturday, for a weekly rundown of our top 5 news stories. Again, that can be found in our newsletter or on Medium or on LinkedIn. Our weekly blog, which can be found in LinkedIn and Medium. And then just the top 3 most engaging LinkedIn posts. And if you think I'm missing one, send them over to me, and I'm more than happy to have a look at it. So thanks for your time, and have a great day.